Hey guys, today on the bench we've got a Lenovo Thinkpad. It's a friend's laptop and it is a X220. It's a bit slow and he wants to know if I can see about upgrading the RAM, maybe put an SSD in it, and maybe even upgrade the CPU. I don't know if you can upgrade the CPU in this. I don't know if it's worth it yet, but we're going to pull the thing apart, see what's involved, and then figure out if it's worth doing it. He likes his laptop. It's a good form factor for him, so he wants to try and keep it running for a bit longer before he has to upgrade. So let's pull the thing apart and see what sort of upgrades we can do, and then see how we can go about doing them. So first things first, before you open a laptop, of course, is to pull the battery. Get that out of the way, and then we'll have a look at the RAM first. So looks like there's 3 screws. Usually these are captive screws, so they don't come out of the cover. That way you can't lose them. Looks like, oh no, that one didn't have to come undone. Yeah, these 2 are captive screws. So we do have another RAM slot, and it is a, I believe it's 4 gigabytes. What's in there now? So it looks like we can put another 4 gig for an 8 gig of RAM. That should be a pretty cheap upgrade. No worries. We'll go ahead and do that. Next step is to actually. Looks like we might be able to take the hard drive out the side here. I've got no idea about these laptops because I've never opened one up before. Looks like something's going on here. There's your hard drive. Well, that's pretty easy. No worries putting an SSD in there. So I'll let them know what a new SSD is worth, and that could be another upgrade to do. Alright, now looks like to lift the keyboard off, there's a number of screws. What I usually like to do is when I take the screws out, I'll place them on the desk somewhere, or even get a bit of foam or a bit of cardboard, corrugated cardboard, stick the screws in so that they don't move around, and put them in the same shape, like the same pattern that they come out of the laptop. That way when you go to put them back in, it's all laid out nice and just, you know, one for one all the way around. So I'm just going to lay them on the desk out of the way, but in order. And the motherboard, we got it out all in one piece. Look at that. So it looks like we can actually take the heatsink off the CPU, but I'm going to go ahead and say that's looking like it's soldered in. I'll take it off anyway because I got some new heatsink compound, GC Extreme, so I'll put that in there just to refresh the thermal interface. And we'll have a look and see what it says. Yep. No way that's getting replaced. So that's as it is. That's going to stay in there. I'll just unplug this. So no upgrading the CPU. Bummer. Alright, I'm going to clean that off and I'll put some new thermal grease there and reinstall this fan. I'll give the fan a bit of a clean out as well. And that'll go back in. Basically all we can upgrade on this laptop is a SSD. We can put some RAM, and there's actually 2 slots here for the there's Wi-Fi in one, and there's another one here. It's the mini PCIe slot. So maybe you could put a I don't know, another Wi-Fi or a maybe GPS or a GSM module. Oh yeah, we got a SIM card up here. So one of these, the unpopulated one, could be used for the GSM module for like a mobile phone or 4G internet access. Isopropyl alcohol, Kim wipes in Japanese or English. Kim wipes are good. They're like tissue, but they're a lot stronger, so they don't put lint everywhere. They're really good for cleaning circuit boards and wiping stuff. So I got my iso alcohol here. Comes straight off. One thing to note when you're doing these heat sinks, don't go around in a circle. It's important to go across diagonally opposite. So if you start here as number 1, go to number 2, then number 3, then number 4. So it's always the furthest screw away. That way you're going to get more even. Sometimes it's even a good idea to just do 1 or 2 turns for each screw. So rather than getting it coming down like this, it's gradually level as it comes all the way down. That way you're not going to put any stress on one part of the chip and you're not going to crack your die. A lot of these fans, they can actually be opened up. So this has got a few screws on top. If we just take those screws out, we should be able to lift the lid and we can get in there with a little mini paintbrush and clean out any dust. So if we lift the lid, you can get right in there, get that dust out. So that's all ready to go in. We've cleaned the fan and we put new heatsink compound on the CPU. Now the thermal pad on the GPU there, I didn't replace that because it's a silicon style and they are kind of reusable. You can't just put thermal paste there because it's actually a little bit of a gap. See, the pressure is down on the CPU there. As the pipes come past, there's a little bit of a gap between the pipes or the little heat spreader underneath and the GPU, and that it relies on the squishiness of the silicon to like take up the slack. If you put just thermal paste, you're not going to get a hard interface and the chip will overheat. So that's all done. We managed to do it without any leftover screws. That's pretty good. So it's all back together. Seems to be working quite well. So all we have to do now is figure out what sort of RAM we're going to use and then the SSD. So the SSD is easy. I'll just get like a 500GB Samsung Evo or something. But the RAM, you want to do a little bit of research on this. So you got to make sure you got the right DDR2, DDR3, DDR4, that sort of thing. This looks like it's DDR3. You also want to check what speed your chipset is capable of operating at. Because if you go and spend lots of money on the fastest RAM, but your chipset can't support it, you've just wasted your money. So you can use like CPU-Z or CPU-Z to have a look at the specs of your processor and your chipset and what RAM's installed and all that sort of stuff. And you can find out what chipset. Then you can do a Google search to find out what the maximum RAM speed is that it can support. Then you're not going to be wasting any money. Of course, if the faster RAM is cheaper, which is sometimes the case, you may as well get the faster RAM. Another thing is, if you're not replacing this RAM and it is slower RAM, even if you put faster RAM in, often it'll just run at the slower speed. So if you want the RAM to be faster, you have to replace a slower RAM with 2 new faster pieces of RAM. Also, another thing to think about is if you want 1.5 volt or 1.35 volt RAM. The lower voltage has the benefit of increasing your battery runtime because it's using a little bit less voltage, but it could be a little bit slower or a little bit more expensive, so you just have to do some research and figure that out. So I'll go and figure out what RAM and what hard drive I want, what SSD, and I'll be back in a sec with the new parts. Okay, so it's time to replace the RAM. So you just pull the 2 tabs back on each side and it pops up, and you can easily just remove it like that. So I've got, what have I got here? Crucial DDR3, 4GB, 1600. So it's just like 4GB of middle of the range DDR3 RAM. And all we got to do, try not to touch the gold fingers, just like that. And we've got the second one here. That way. There's our RAM done. All we have to do now is close it up. RAM upgrade completed. Now we've got to do is replace the hard drive. So the easy bit is just putting the new hard drive in the caddy and sliding it in. But you're going to need a external USB drive, like an external USB drive case to copy everything over. So you want to clone this hard drive onto the new hard drive. I've got a Samsung Evo 500 gigabytes. This one's like a 320 gigabyte or something. So there's not going to be any problem with space. If you go into a smaller hard drive, you got to delete stuff off this drive, move it off into another drive or whatever. So the total of what's on here is less than the new drive. But we've got no problems with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a Linux CD. I'm going to boot to that Linux CD, and that will show me both drives. And then we're going to copy from one disk across the other disk. Then we can swap them around and put them in the machine or whatever, and we'll be good to go. So I'll do the hardware swap first, and then we'll move on to doing the software side of things. And with that, our laptop is upgraded. Now when it comes to SSDs, these things are awesome for upgrading your laptop. So much faster than these. These are only usually rated to 5400 RPM. These don't have an RPM, of course, but they're massively faster. If you have a performance laptop or you've done upgrades already, sometimes you get a 7200 RPM, which are faster, but these are still so much faster. Also, these are lighter. They use less power, which means less heat and longer battery life. So all round, they're one of the best upgrades you can do. You put one of these in and you'll feel like you've got a new laptop. With the RAM, you can get away with 4 gig of RAM on like Windows 7. It likes 8. If you got Windows 8 or 10, I recommend going to 8 gig. You don't need more than that unless you're doing video editing or heavy gaming. That in my laptop I got 24 gig. I don't go near using it. Even when I'm editing HD footage or I'm like playing Skyrim or Fallout 4, I could put up to 36 gig. Don't even need it. Don't even need 24 gig. So 8 gig of RAM, SSD, you're set. CPU, last thing on the list. Unless it's a very old laptop, don't need to touch the CPU, but if you do need to, your laptop's probably getting old, so if you probably outgrown it. If it's cheap to upgrade, you can, but number 1, SSD, number 2, RAM. Assuming your system's not already choking on like 1 or 2 gig of RAM, of course. Alright, so the next step is to partition and format the drive in here, the new SSD, and then copy everything from here into here. If we do a direct copy, bit for bit, this laptop should just boot up and operate as if nothing's happened. It shouldn't even know that there's a different disk. It shouldn't throw up any errors at all. Just work. So I'll change the camera, point at the screen, and I'll show you how we go about doing that. Alright, so I got my CloneZilla. That's what we're going to be using to do the cloning of one disk to the other. So that's put on here. If you go to the CloneZilla website, clonezilla.org, I'll link it down below. You'll find the image, stick it on a USB stick, and that can go into the computer. And of course we've got the older hard drive inside my custom made case here. This is a USB 3 enclosure which I've made out of a Super Nintendo cartridge. You can see an earlier video on how to make one of those. So power on, and you got to enter the boot menu. So whatever that is for your computer, hit that key. In this case it's F12. And we will get into the boot menu. So we go down and we select the USB drive, and it will boot CloneZilla. So you can hit enter, and then it will start to boot the actual operating system. Again, choose your language, enter for English. Don't touch a key map. You want to start CloneZilla. Now this is where you can choose the mode you want to use. So the device image, you can work with disks or partitions using images, or device to device, work directly from a disk or partition to a disk or partition. That's what we want, the second one. We'll go to beginner is good. Disk to local disk. Okay, here we got to choose the source, and you've got to be careful. The top one is our new disk, the bottom is the old disk. So the source is the old disk. So that's the 320 gig, the one down the bottom. And the target, that's where you're copying things to. Now see here, all data on the entire disk will be lost and replaced. So make sure you get this the right way around. So our target is a 500 gigabyte SSD. So we hit enter. If you're not sure, keep the default options. Enter on there. Are you sure you want to continue? Yeah, let's do it. Yes. Let me ask you again. Double check. Now I guess you've already backed up all your files. You should have done that to start with. But as long as you're safe and you're ready to go, let's do it. Yes, yes, yes. And then we sit back and relax and wait for it to finish. So this will take a little while, so I'll come back in a sec and show you what happens when it's done. And we're done. Seemed to work alright, no major errors. So let's reboot. That's going to count down and reboot. I'll just disconnect all the other devices. Seems to be working. That's Windows 10. Nice. It works perfectly. Fantastic. Now there is one more thing to do. See, if I come over here to this PC, 270 gigabytes. Look at that. We've got a 500 gigabyte hard drive. The reason for that is we've got a 320 gigabyte hard drive. Some of that is used for the recovery partition, which you can see here at Lenovo Recovery. And there's some other bits and pieces that are like the rescue image and whatnot, which is taking up space. But we should be a lot more than 270 gigabytes. That's because we cloned a 320 gigabyte hard drive and it's only cloned that. So there's a lot of unpartitioned space. So we have to expand the partition to take up all the available space in the hard drive. And then we've got all of our space back. So if we right click on the start menu and go to disk management, we can actually see it here. I'll make that full screen. So you see this black section on the right hand side, unallocated, 167.67 gigabytes. We need to allocate that space and join it to our Windows 7 operating system. That means we're going to have to move these two and then put these two together, this one and this one. Now the easy way to fix this is just to right click and create a new simple volume. That creates a partition and it appears as there's another hard drive. But it'll be nicer to have that joined, these two joined together. Okay, there's one more thing to download, that's gparted. It's another Linux operating system utility thing that allows us to play around with the partitions on our hard drive. So I've already got that on the stick. If you go to the website, link down below once again, download the appropriate version for your computer, and also if you want it for the ISO to burn onto a disk or just a zip to put onto a USB stick. So we'll boot to that. Default settings. It's all just defaults, enter, 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 through the whole lot. Okay. So here you can see all of our partitions. This is our main partition here. We've got a few small ones, and we've got all that unallocated space in the grey. So what we want to do is we want to move these two small ones to the end. So resize move. I'm going to move it, you see I can drag it right to the back. Then you can see it's at the back there. Now this hasn't actually done it yet. We have to apply. But you can queue up a few different things and then it will apply them in order. So you don't have to do one operation then wait for however long it takes, then do the next operation. You can do a few in the queue and then do it all at once and walk away, have a coffee, do whatever, come back when it's done. So we'll do that. So we're going to move this other smaller partition to the back. You see there? And now this one, the main one, we want to resize move, and we want to grab that arrow and size it right up there. There we go, that's looking pretty good now. So we got the little boot partition or whatever at the start, our main partition take up all the available space, then our recovery partitions at the back. Now once we're done, we hit apply. Do we want to apply the pending operations? They're the things we queued up, and yes we do. And it just starts doing it. So right now it's moving all of those first two partitions. I think it's doing the first one at the moment. Yep, 25.39 gig. That's the this larger one at the end. Once it's finished moving that, it's going to do the smaller one. Then it's going to increase the size of the main partition. Once we're done there, we should be able to reboot, and it will just be perfectly done, all working. Alright, so we've rebooted, and let's see what we got here. Look at that, 410 gigabytes. Worked perfectly. Look at that. No worries. Now if you have problems extending the partitions, sometimes gparted will get hung up a bit. You can just reboot once you've moved any partitions out of the way, so you've got a blank space directly next to your main partition that you want to extend. Come back into Windows, go to Disk Management, and then you'll see you have, this is the main partition that we want to extend, and you'll see there's a blank black section. You can then just right click and extend volume, and there'll be a wizard that pops up, and it will just do it. Sometimes gparted, like I said, gets hung up, sometimes it doesn't, but to extend it, you need to, in Windows, you need to have the blank space directly next to the partition you want to extend. That's why we had to move these two across to the end. So that's worked well, and that there is how you update the RAM, hard drive, and do a little bit of an overhaul on your laptop. Get it running nice and fast again. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it helps you out. Don't forget we got the Patreon going. Check it out. Keep watching the videos, and we'll see you next time.